Hey, Gabi.
Hey, how are
It's a
you?
pleasure to be with you here today.
It's my pleasure too.
And I know we've met several times over the course of the last couple of months. But just in case, let me introduce myself to you again. So I'm Lukas. I'm a commercial director at Edenred, and I'm part of our executive board for Europe. And I'm responsible for all our network partnerships in Europe. So we're talking about all the oil companies, all the big brands, as well as the charge point operators and other partnerships in the mobility ecosystem. On top of that, not to forget, as well, revenue management, which is all about how we price our solutions and strategy. So that's roughly my remit. And I think you are in HR, right?
Yes, exactly. And it's really nice to know a little bit more about yourself, about you. And just to introduce myself here, nowadays I am responsible for learning development topics for EMEA Mobility at All, which is a huge challenge. And I'm so excited to do it right now, to be in charge of it right now. I've been working for Edenred as a company for 6 years. I started in Brazil. We are going to speak a little bit more about that. And I've been living here in Germany for 6 months, actually. So it's quite new, and I'm really loving it.
Great, yeah. It's actually funny because I've also worked for Edenred now for almost 6 years. So see that
Oh,
you've been working in Brazil, I've been working in Germany or Europe, yeah.
yeah, at the
So it's
same
good.
time.
Yeah, it's it's good
Well,
to have you here.
and I heard that you change your life in several ways because you move for different countries, different places, and I would love to hear from you. What is mobility for you at all? Like, what is the concept of it?
Yeah, good question, and it's absolutely true. So I've also been a big mover across country, so I'll come to that in a moment. But I think it's important to be a bit clearer about what we're talking about. Yeah, so when we look at mobility, you can talk about an external mobility. So it's all about people, that move, that need to go from A to B, that need to be transported. So that's all around the external mobility. By the way, there's an interesting stat that I researched for this. So in medieval times, what percentage of the population do you think moved around?
Wow, I
So
have no
let's
idea.
pick the year 1000. Or let's say 1100. What do you think? How many
I don't
people?
know, maybe 10% of it.
Yeah, actually, that's very close to it. Yeah.
Really?
So about only 5%, 5 to 10% were actually moving around and were mobile, and 90 to 95% of the population was just fixed and set at one place. So that's quite amazing. And if you look at our modern times, what do you think the percentage is now?
I have no idea. Maybe a little bit higher because we have more technology to make this kind of movements easier, but maybe, I don't know, maybe 20% or something like that.
Yeah, so it's actually upside down. So in
Oh,
the
really?
medieval times, you had about 5% of people traveling and being mobile. And in our today's age, we have about 90 to 95%. So it's exactly the way around that actually travel and are mobile. And that's when you look at that, when you look at this huge market of people traveling privately, of meeting friends, of visiting relatives, and then you combine that with the whole professional mobility market. So people need to transport goods from A to B. People drive with their company cars. People go on business travel, and you see that you have more than 90% of people doing that. Then that's a very exciting market to be in, because that's pretty much what we do as Edenred. We provide mobility solutions to fleet customers. So we provide fuel cards, toll solutions, and a lot of other solutions just to help professional people move from A to B. And I think that's a really fantastic
Interesting fact.
place to be in. And that's also part of our DNA. Mobility is part of our DNA, and you are, I would say, living proof, that
Definitely.
mobility is in our DNA, right? In a
Yes,
way.
exactly. I remember 6 years ago when I was joining the company, I remember that in my, I don't know, second or third interview with my former manager, I said in the end of the interview something, Just for you to know, it's a dream for me to have international opportunity, to have like a career over the sea. So it's something that you must consider if you decide to hire me. And if you think that this company is not providing me this kind of opportunity, please, we are not like, try to not to close this position with me, because I would prefer to be in another place. And here I am.
But
like,
you know what I really love about that is that you actually mentioned that in the hiring discussion, right? Like
exactly.
before you started, and you had, and you also told me that you had never lived really outside of Brazil, right?
Exactly.
To that point. So
it's a interesting story, because I was dreaming about that in my early 20s. I was working in different companies and different departments in HR always, but I could see a lot of people moving to different countries to have like an international experience, professionally speaking, and it was like a dream for me to have something like that, you know. So I set this goal when I was really, really young, and I was trying to prepare my career and to develop my skills, considering this personal goal that I set it for myself.
Yep.
And it was funny because, like, for me, these kind of things, like when I was talking about that in my interview, like during the hiring process, it was something that I was trying to establish from the scratch. Like, we are starting a new chapter right now, and it's important for you as my manager to understand that this is my dream, this is my career goal. So I want to invite you to be a sponsor of it, as I am trying so hard to get that. So I think it's this kind of behavior is something really important for everyone who is dreaming about that. I don't know what kind of behaviors for you, what kind of attitudes for you. It's quite important for this process too. I would love to hear from you about that.
Yeah, so for me, this is already lesson number one. Yeah, so it's always good to spend time and learn a few things from it. So to me, lesson number one so far in terms of mobility, and specifically internal mobility, what we're trying to focus on today, is the being proactive. Yeah, you cannot always wait for everything to come to you. I mean, there is a famous Kennedy quote, if I'm not mistaken, about don't ask what the government can do for you or what the country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country, and it's not fully transferable, but in a way, it's like if you want to move, if you want to be mobile, don't only wait until the company comes to you and says, "Wait, I have the perfect position for you. You're super fit, so please do that." You know, it has to do with yourself as well. You need to want it, and you need to stand in and stand up for your dreams. And if your dream is to move across continents and across oceans, so to say, then this is exactly the right way to address it. You address it early, you address it with your manager, with your future manager, and you make it very clear it's a priority for you. And I love that. You know, that's exactly the way how it works.
Yes.
And did you think were there any other sort of success factors why you were given the opportunity? So you obviously mentioned that you wanted to do it, but what was the next step? Like, was there anything that contributed to you being able to receive that position or possibility?
Yes, like once I had this conversation with my previous manager, it was really nice, because every time that she had in the desk, like in the table, any global topic or any global project to handle, she was putting me in charge of it. So it was really nice, because I could be more exposure for global topics, and I could learn a lot from different people around the world, to different cultures. And the second thing that I think that was so important for me is, I don't know if everybody knows about that, but the company is giving for our employees 2 specific things, which is really, really a huge investment that the company is making to everyone. The first thing is the Speaks platform, which is a platform that everybody can develop their language skills. You can learn like 6 different languages through this platform, which is so nice, and it's like the company is paying for that, so it's free for everyone. Like
so
you
like
can just
the company's Duolingo or
exactly, like you can just like access Eden People Learning and like try to search what kind of language do you want to improve or do you want to learn, and you can go ahead and like be in charge of your dreams about being responsible for your own life. It's a good thing. And the second thing for me, it's I was aware about the job posting tool that we have also in Eden People, and over there you can just find all the internal positions, all the positions that we have open here in our company, not only in your country but around the world. So, and it's easy because you can just set some alerts for the tool, send you an email every time that any position that matches with your profile, it's open. So I was like searching for HR positions because it's my field right now, and like across the world. So every time that a new position was opened, I received an email, and it was really nice for me because I could understand like which countries are searching for HR people, the skills they are requiring for this position. It was really nice for me. And both of these tools that the company offered to me, and not only to me, but for all of us as employees, were really, really crucial for me to being here right now, you know. So I am so proud of it. And like, of course, I was working a lot on several projects, and every time that because like the move to Germany, it wasn't my first movement inside the company. As you said, we were discussing about external movements and internal movements too. And like I faced a lot of different challenges in HR when I was working in Brazil. Yeah. So I started in the company looking only for training, for example, and some specific topics related to culture. Then I was expanding my scope. So I started to work in some engagement topics too, and then I started to work.
But Gabi, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You know, like so you see the Brazilian and the German cultures, yeah. So it's an interesting pair here that we're having. So I'm still, and this is really great info. I love the story. So I'll just help breaking that down because I'm also learning a few lessons from myself. You know, so proactivity I knew, but the second lesson from that, and that's very important, is if you are interested in moving across borders, is working on international topics. So looking at topics that are a bit cross-border, you know, like bigger topics. So trying to move a little bit out of your own bubble. So that's probably like lesson number 2. Lesson number 3, and you can correct me if I get this wrong. Yeah. So lesson number 3 for me is, if you want to move. And if you want to move from one country to another, from one function to the other, are you leveraging the tools that we have at Edenred properly? So because that's something really, really good what you said, because a lot of people talk about, oh, I'm interested, I could do, I would like to. Okay, so then when you ask them, when was the last time you actually went on the internal job board and you checked and filtered and put yourself an alert on positions that could fit for you globally? When have you done that? And then you find out, oh, they haven't actually done that, or they weren't aware. So lesson number 3 is really leveraging those tools that we have available, right?
Exactly. Like it's a big opportunity that we have in the company, in a global company that we are right now. Like it's a global environment. There are a lot of international projects that you can just raise your hand and ask to join in. So I think we have a lot of big opportunities, and I can see I worked for a lot of big companies, and it's not so common to see a company as our company, like as Edenred is doing right now. They are doing a huge investment in our career, you know. So those kind of tools is really, for me, it's not only an opportunity, but it's a huge investment that the company is doing in all of us.
Yeah, and we're a fantastic company in that sense as well, because we are the advantage of being so big as we are a global company. Yeah, so we provide solutions for 2 million vehicles in Europe alone, and I think another 2 million in Latin America. So we have hundreds of thousands of customers and partners and merchants that work with us. So we're truly global. That's something I also really love. And when you think about internal mobility and you look at our global footprint, the interesting part is as well the different skill sets and initiatives that you have in the different regions across the globe, and this piece of mobility. That's why mobility is so important. Internal mobility is so important, because by moving someone like yourself from Brazil to Germany, yeah, you bringing your skill set, you're bringing your whole cultural background, you're bringing cool initiatives that you've done there, and you can infuse that into Germany, yeah. And you know, any Brazilian will light up Germany, yeah, in a way. So not to yeah. So so I think that's very positive, and it would probably work the other way around, yeah. If you send a German to Brazil, then you could probably bring initiatives and things you've done in Germany and bring it to Brazil. So that's. Yeah, this exchange of skill set is good. Or what do you think about that?
It's a really good thing. When I was moving to here, someone told me a very short story about when you're leaving your own country, like you are wearing a backpack with a lot of learnings, but you should be smart enough to understand when you need to open your backpack. So this is something that it's interesting, because I don't know how it was for you, and I would love to hear more about that. But every time that you are moving from another country, it's really important to keep your mind open to learn new things, because like you don't know all the answers, you don't have all the answers. So it's important for you to keep your mind open. And I would love to know about your history here, like how it was for you to move to different countries, what kind of things you learned from that. So I would love to hear more.
Yeah, okay, that is a long story. Yeah, so it's quite a few countries. So in total, I've lived in probably more than 10 countries for a longer period. So let me try to look at it. I mean, it's been in the USA, it's been in Hungary, in the Arab Emirates, Australia. I've spent a few years in the UK, 5 years I think in total, and there's a couple of Italy, yeah. So there's a couple more countries, and I think this mobility. That's one key learning for me as well. Mobility is also a mindset. You know, there's people out there in the world that don't have the need, and that don't necessarily need to live in another country. They're very happy. You know, they have everything around where they are based. They don't need to really move out of that. They have a good work, and everything is fine for them. And I cherish that as well. You know, like that's very good. But then you have people that are a bit more internationally driven, that really want to move abroad, and that want to really dive in. To me, that also has to do with a bit of risk taking, you know, because it's a risk. Let's be honest, yeah. Like moving cross border is a risk, because you could not really align with the culture well. You could not fit in the teams. You could potentially worsen your position because you left at a good position, but then it doesn't fit out of some weird reason. You know, it's like a football team moving from their home ground to another stadium, but then the pitch and the grass is so bumpy that you can't play properly. Yeah, so so you can worsen your own position. So it has to do with risk taking. As well. And so part of my journey, and now I'm just coming back to that, is taking this risk, being curious, and wanting to experience the foreign influences and learning about it. So all of these were big motivations for me to make those moves and experience that. Yeah.
And it was like an opportunity for you, like it opens your mind for like what has changed in your life after you faced a lot of different cultures, different experience, like across the world, how it was for you?
Yeah, it's I must say an exciting move was certainly when we moved from Germany to the United Arab Emirates. So I worked for an airline in the UAE, in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, and that was really a big step, because one thing is you move within Europe, which also can have its challenges, you know, but then moving really to completely different cultural background, that was a very interesting experience. But what I've learned is there is a couple of hygiene factors or base factors that you need to bring with you when you move. And to that, first of all, I think you need to be flexible to a certain degree. So you need to bring some adaptability and flexibility with you. Otherwise, you will not be able to settle in the new country. It's good to be a fast learner, yeah, because you learn things. Somebody, I mean, in the United Kingdom, in England, if you keep driving on the wrong side of the road, on the right side, you have a big problem. So you need to learn quickly to switch to drive on the left side. As fun.
You will find some fines.
Yeah, exactly. You have one example. So being a fast learner, being very flexible, those are things that you have to bring with you, and you will also strengthen these sort of factors, right? Because you then learn on the job. What do you think? Do you think there's more? What other things do you learn through the move? What other things do you have to bring with you in order to successfully move from place A to place B?
Definitely, I think that flexibility is the most important thing, because like you are learning all the time, and it's something important to say that it's not learning in a passive way. Like you cannot like just wait for the people to teach you about everything. Like it's important to be in charge of it, like to be proactive in terms of it. So I face some situations here that are memorable ones, because it's everything new. So like in Brazil, like you can have, for example, a very, very simple thing, but you can put all the trash in one specific bin. Like you don't need to split the trash. And here, as I could learn, you need to split, for example, the trash in 7 different bins. So it's quite crazy, you know. And yesterday I was putting out the trash in the biggest bin that we have, like in the building, and a German guy was just watching me, and he was quite staring at me and just checking if I was doing it right. So, and I told to him, like, I am learning that. Can you please teach me, because like it's quite new. And like, do you know, like the small things, it's very important for you to keep your curiosity very on, because like you need to be open to learn everything. So it's interesting, and for me, it's a skill that definitely you need to have, because if you don't bring it with you, you will probably struggle a lot, especially in the beginning, because you are starting from the scratch. So it's a huge challenge, and it's great because in our company we have the opportunity to not to start exactly from the scratch, because as you are moving to another, like you have your history inside here, you know, like the managers, the people know about you, know you are a talent professional. So it's a good thing. You don't need to start from the scratch, but definitely in terms of culture, in terms of starting a new chapter in your life, you will need to learn about everything.
Yeah, true, but that's a good point, because you don't have to start from scratch. The beauty of Edenred is as well, it is so global, so you will interact with a lot of global colleagues, so which can also prepare you already for moving towards their culture, right? So
exactly.
So, but that leads me to another point. So flexibility, we said, you know, adaptability, and so there were 2 more. So one for me is also resilience, because you need a certain degree of resilience, because generally what I experienced, as at least in some of the moves, is this typical curve. You know, at the beginning everything is absolutely fantastic, and you experience everything, and you love everything, and then comes this phase of realization of, oh, hold on a second. Everything is quite different than at home, and it's going to stay like that for a longer while. And then you have this, and then your excitement goes down, you know, and then you just a little bit of homesickness might set in. So you need to get through that until you come to a good level of acceptance and a good level of being able to understand what's the good in the current place where you're at, and what's maybe not so good, what's better at home, but just to accept both worlds in a way, you know. But you need resilience in order to run through this curve. And
exactly, because you face challenge. There's like a certain thing. There's no way to avoid that. So you must be brave enough to go ahead and just like, I have some mottos with me, and one of them is like, when you have like a not so good day, like a bad day, you just say, okay, it's just a bad day, and tomorrow it's a new chapter. I will start again. I will try new things again. And
Exactly.
It's important to keep this mindset open for and just engage yourself every single day, because otherwise, like, you will not handle it. So it's
I will add mine on that as well. Yeah, so that's a good one. So it's just one day, right? So mine is a bit more drastic, but it goes like this. When you go through hell, just keep going.
I love it. That's a good one too.
So because you might have these periods, you know, where you're really fed up and you want to just go home, and you want to be in the known environment. And yeah, and then you just can't. So it's like, okay, you need to be resilient. Just keep going, and it will always get better. Yeah.
Yes, and you will always find some people that is open to help you to face everything. Like, you can have like your manager or your colleagues, or like, you will find people that will definitely help you to handle that. And especially when we are struggling to do some specific things, like in your personal life or your professional life, you will find some, I call them angels, like they are quite like angels to help you in your daily life. So it's important to be open to that too.
And do you think Edenred does enough for for promoting internal mobility? I mean, we know today we're talking about Edenred's 11 commandments, so to say. Well, it's obviously the Dream Team values, but one of them is internal mobility, what we're talking about. So the big question is, and I don't have an answer, but you work in HR, so maybe you have a better estimate. Do you think Edenred does enough already?
Yes, I think that there's a lot of things that the company is doing right now to promote that. So the first two things I already mentioned. The first thing is to invest in terms of language development. It's really, really important because, of course, to have the right mindset, it's a really good thing. Mm-hmm. But you cannot do everything by yourself. Like, sometimes it's important for you to understand that you need to have to improve some skills, and language it's a key topic especially when you are moving abroad. And the second thing that I already mentioned is the job posting, because I think that definitely is something that you can search for some positions. It's a really good opportunity for you. The third one is you can mention, or you can have the discussion about that in some specific campaigns that the company are doing across the year, through the year. So the first thing is, when we are facing it right now, actually, I think that you heard about that, the career discussion campaign. It's a moment in the year that all employees can have a very, very good discussion with their managers to speak about their career, what they are planning to the short term or the long term period, like what they are aiming to do. So I think that this is really nice. Well, I've been working in HR for 15 years, and I can tell you that you cannot find a lot of companies that are putting their time and money on that. So it's a good thing, you know, you need to take advantage of that, because it's a good tool for everyone to be more prepared to have these conversations and establish your career wishes for everyone, as I did when I was in the interview with my former manager. So I think that definitely the company is doing a lot of movements to boost this topic. And I can see, when I look at not only for European people, but when I look across the globe, I can see a lot of people that are doing this kind of movements, which is so nice. And just for you to know, I don't know if you have this information, but last year, we have almost, if I'm not wrong, 70% of people answering trying to fill up the form of career discussion. And 30% of them, almost 30% of them, was intending to have like this kind of international experience. They were planning they are saying, hey, I would love to have opportunity in another country. And this is so nicely, like almost 30%, it's a lot. What do you think? Like,
I think that's amazing, yeah, and that's a really good base of having more people be mobile across countries within the company. But you know, like here comes my but on that, is just filling out the interest. That's not enough, and that's what we discussed at the beginning. In terms of you may say and state your intention, but then you need to follow up with a few actions, which means being really proactive, pushing the topic, looking at the tools to leverage those, you know, trying to work on international topics. So you have to also do these other steps. But it's a very, very nice and positive sign to have so many people state that they're interested in the international work.
It's good to see that.
And one other addition on these things is as well. On the different lessons we've talked about, one other addition is the network building. That shouldn't be underestimated as well, right? So it helps so much if you can already build networks across different countries or with other country organizations, because you learn what is needed, what positions are open, or you know, you could even meet your future manager that way, and then he might say, oh, I like this person because I worked with her or him in an international context, and then pull you over. So this is important. So network building should not be underestimated, and it's also another building stone. Yeah.
In 2022, I was part of the Talent Week program. And
there you go. Yeah, exactly.
Really nice, because it's another initiative that the company is doing right now. And at this time, I had the opportunity to meet Anne Monet, which is my manager right now.
Ah, there you go.
So you can see, like, it's so important to establish this kind of global network, because like it's going to open you different doors in terms of opportunities and career streams, and it's a huge thing. And it's important for you to, it's your wish, it's your career desire, you should put some effort on that.
And also what we haven't spoken about is the benefits for you yourself and for your future career, and for the job roles you're doing. So I can give an example from my own job role, what I told you about, that I'm active in all of Europe and all of EMEA, and I work with all our network partners. Yeah, what I said, from different oil companies to charge point operators to anyone in the mobility ecosystem, also even OEMs, car manufacturers. So all these partners, and all these partners are located in different countries and locations and cultures in Europe, and working with them and working successfully with them means understanding their culture and understanding the way they think, understanding the way how they make decisions, and catering to that. And only I would say, a keystone here is the breadth of and scope of international experience that has helped to address all these topics, because you can't go, live for 30 years in one place and then believe you can adapt to each of these different cultures. It's not that simple. So you need to. So in order to go away from a one-trick pony approach and to be able to be a bit have a bit more of a multiverse approach when you talk to these different partners, the international experience helps so much, and that's why that's a big benefit.
Yes, I was wondering to ask you about that, like as an ex-com member. What do you think about that? Do you think that this kind of experience is enriching not only the curriculum and the professional experience that this person has, but do you think that it's something that you are considering when you are, for example, interviewing someone, or when you are choosing someone for your team? Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's a valid point, and it really depends on the role. So we have international roles, and we have roles that request you specifically to be active across different countries. Just recently, we've made one of our country managers in the team that has been responsible for Austria. Sorry, he's done Austria and Switzerland, and so we've now made him responsible for Benelux and the German region, and he had to have this geographical footprint already beforehand, and he had to have international experience. And a lot of the people in the team and a lot of the people that are in leading positions in the teams with me have to have this international footprint in the background. And it's really a necessity. Yeah? Otherwise, you cannot work across borders. So to answer your question, absolutely. So you look at the requirements for the role, and the more international and the broader the role is, the better, or as a requirement, the better the person it is if the person has a international background and has this ability to move and has lived in different cultures. So
okay, I can see that.
But even in general, because we talked about flexibility and adaptability and so on, like even what you've done now, you've learned to experience and work with new characters, new culture, new way of looking at things. That helps tremendously when you work with customers or when you work with any sort of other network partners. By moving, you're creating the ability to adapt and to cater and understand different ways of thinking and different people better. So in any way, it's a massive benefit for your job life, but also for your private life, etc. Yeah.
Exactly. I think that something that I've been learning a lot is to connect the dots sometimes that is not so obviously. Like you can understand, I can understand the Brazilian scenario and I can understand the European scenario, and I can see some different subjects that sometimes usually I couldn't understand like how they are connected, but now that I like expand my knowledge about everything, I can see the things in a different perspective, which is so nice, and definitely it's a skill that is a transversal thing, like I can see that a lot of different job positions that would love to have someone like with this kind of skills set. So I think it's like this movement, it's always helping everyone to be more complete as a professional,
Exactly, I like the word, yeah, completeness. That's good. It makes you more complete. Yeah?
Exactly.
And opens you more opportunities, and it opens your own horizon, but also opens you for yourself more opportunities. So that's great. And coming back to the cultural aspect, what I do find amusing still, is the fact that you've moved from Brazil to Germany, because if you look at Europe and the different cultures, you could probably group. Although I hope no one from France, Italy, or Spain shoots me now, but you could probably
be careful.
Exactly. So, but you could probably group different cultures in a little bit in different boxes, So you have your Latin cultures, then you have your more like Anglo-Saxon cultures, Then you have the German, maybe partially Scandinavian countries. Then you have like the Central and Eastern Europe, and so on. So. But certainly, if you had moved to, let's say, Spain, it would have been, or Portugal, easy one, but it would have been maybe a bit closer to what you are used to, where you came from. But now you've moved to Germany as a Brazilian, so which is quite really a difference in culture. So just out of a bit of fun as well, what would you say was the funniest coincidence or story where you saw that the cultures really are very different? Is there something that you could recall, or
a lot of different stories that I could face, like funny, some of them more funny, some of them more hard, but it's so funny to see because the first thing I think it's here in Germany, people are very, very, very organized, and they are quiet, and they are really straight to the point. And I remember, several moments of my life when I arrived here, like in my first week. I was just going to a specific appointment to solve some visa stuff, and I was speaking quite loud. and I was shaking my hands a lot. And the person who was advising me to this kind of visa stuff, she just said, hey, because people were staring at me and I couldn't see that, like I was quite like just saying and speaking like a Brazilian, which is quite normal. And she said for me, hey, just for you to know, people here in Germany, sometimes they are more quiet, they are more like they are not shaking their hands like this. So you can probably observe here and you will get used to it. And I was like, okay. So it's a funny story, but like it's a short one. And it's in my first week here because I could like understand that it's if you want to move to a different country, you need to be open and you need to observe all the time. Like you can see, like it's not. I'm not telling that you cannot be yourself. It's not that, but like it's important for you to understand that they have some habits. They have some things that it's important for their culture. So it's about respect, like you need to understand and be open to learn from that. And it was really nice to see this kind of difference. And now every time that I am going for a different place, like I was traveling to Italy, as I told you, I don't know, 3 months ago. And when I was moving to the German airport, to the Italian one, I could see that people were speaking quite loud as in Brazil. And I was like, okay, I can see the difference here. So every time that you are moving to a different place, you can see the different attitudes and the different habits that this population has. So it's important for you to be open to that. And I think that's something that I love from German culture, and especially not only for German, but I think that here in Europe, people are really good to prioritize topics. So like I remember that in Brazil, we were sometimes working a lot, like several hours in a day, and like doing not so much as we can do here, because I think that effectiveness is something that people are searching for all the time. So I could see, for example, Pierre Jaladi and all the EXCO members saying, oh, our priorities, it's this and this and this, like 3. And that's it. And like I remember that when I was working in Brazil, 20 priorities, so no priority. So it's funny. I think that both ways are working right now. But it's interesting for me to learn from this difference, So
interesting. That's very interesting. I can agree with you on that. Yeah. So my wife is Mexican.
Oh, so, tell me about. You have a lot of stories. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So in terms of order of priority and prioritizing topics, it can be similar. Yeah. So I also remember. I also lived in Mexico for almost a year. And just a last little anecdote as well on these cultural differences, being invited to a barbecue in Mexico, because in Germany, when you're invited to a barbecue, first of all, you're invited minimum 4 weeks beforehand, right? if not 6 weeks, yeah. And then when you arrive there, everything is obviously on the minute. Everything is already made and prepared. And so I was invited to a Mexican barbecue, and when I arrived, it turned out that I had to first go and buy all the ingredients and all the meat, then pick up the chairs and the table somewhere, yeah, and so,
organize the event.
Yeah, and then by the time we were back, there was still no guest there, so the guests then arrived at some point, like a few hours later, and that was a very, very, very fun experience, So I mean, of course, not everyone's like that, so maybe it was a very specific situation, but just as a little,
yes.
Like you said, you have these anecdotes, and
exactly.
and that's what puts some spice as well in life, doesn't it?
Yes, yes, and I think that we can learn from different sides, and it's interesting to live both of them, to have this kind of opportunity to live both of them, because otherwise, like I like it's for me when I was younger, it was so small to just be stuck in my own country and live my life like this. Like, I think that mobility is a choice that you do in your career, and you pursue for all the time. Like, you are always searching for that. Like, it's something very specific, but it's definitely the biggest challenge, but the best moment ever in my life. So
yeah, and if we as a company, as a market leader for mobility, if we are not capable to providing internal mobility, if we're capable to providing mobility for, like we said, 4 million vehicles, I think over 1 million customers, then if we're capable to do that, then the least we should be able to do is provide this internal mobility for our employees, because mobility is in our DNA. So this is
exactly. And if you sometimes I think that people are not struggling or not so like 100% sure that they want to apply for a position or start this journey. What kind of advice would you suggest for them?
So in that regard, what you said, mobility is a choice. That I fully agree with that. So, and mobility and the wish to do it has to come from yourself. So you cannot be really convinced by someone else. So in my view, it's okay to hesitate, but you need to make your own choice, and it needs to come, and there needs to be an intrinsic motivation to do it. And then, okay, there can be like a little push. So you can walk up to the cliff, and you can say, I would really love to jump from the cliff, but you need to at least walk up yourself to the cliff, you know. And there can be a gentle push, so that you fall off, and then end up in a new position or in a new country. So that as a manager, you can give that gentle push, but it's not the manager's role to carry you on your arms or on your back, you know, all the way up to the cliff. You need to walk yourself. But the last little push, sure, as a manager, then you can do that. And this last little push, what does it mean? It can mean that you then tell the employee, yes, you're a really good employee. I don't want to lose you, but I encourage you, and I will help you on your path, you know. And that is something that, from a management ethos, you should represent that at Edenred. If you have employees in your team that are very good and that have opportunities internally or even externally, then you know, you should always help people on their path and not hold them back. So I think that's the responsibility of the manager.
Definitely, it's a good thing that because I think that sometimes the leaders are feeling quite afraid because they are losing their talents, and they are just more concerned about how I will replace this position. Like, I don't want to miss this person right now, and like, it's not the right mindset, right?
No, exactly. And the truth is, everyone's replaceable. First of all, as harsh as that sounds, and then secondly, if you give an employee the chance to move across borders or to another business unit, the employee comes back. You might have a better employee on a better level of conscience, and with all the other benefits that we've addressed.
Yes, and as a company, we have a lot of new projects to launch in 2026 to boost more and more the topic. So we have job shadowing to launch. We have like international programs, new versions. So like several things that we are planning for right now, and let's see what the future will bring to us. Cool.
Sounds really good. I think we've covered a long number of topics. So I've really enjoyed that discussion, actually, and it's really cool to be here with you, to see how you've lived this whole story and how well you're doing in Germany. It's very nice to see.
I'd love to learn more and to hear your experience, your stories. It was really pleasure for me to have this conversation. Thank you so much.
Great.